Good evening and welcome to a town hall meeting with Republican presidential candidate Ron Paul. I'm Kent Snyder and we are broadcasting live from Manchester, New Hampshire. Soon after this program tonight, Fox News will host a forum for the Republican candidates. However, Fox News did not invite Dr. Paul, even though Dr. Paul received 10% of the vote in the recent Iowa caucuses, just 3 points behind John McCain and Fred Thompson, and 6 points ahead of Rudy Giuliani. In addition, Dr. Paul raised nearly $20 million this last quarter, likely more than any other Republican candidate. The purpose of this program is to give voters in New Hampshire and throughout the country an opportunity to learn more about Ron Paul and his campaign for president. Tonight's format, it is a town hall meeting, so most of the questions will come from our audience. I welcome them here tonight and thank them for their participation. Let's meet the candidate. Congressman Ron Paul is serving in his 10th term in the U.S. House. He's an OBGYN who has delivered more than 4,000 babies. He grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and graduated from Gettysburg College and Duke University School of Medicine. He served in the U.S. Air Force as a flight surgeon. Dr. Paul and his wife, Carol, celebrated 50 years of marriage last year. They have 5 children, 18 grandchildren, and 1 great-grandchild. Dr. Paul, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ken. Appreciate it. Thank you.
You've been campaigning for president for about a year now, Dr. Paul. Why do you want to be president, and what got you involved in politics in the beginning?
Well, it is a long story, but I'll give you the short version. I've been in politics since the 70s. I became interested in politics because of the economic conditions back at that time. In the 1970s, we were paying for guns and butter of the 1960s, and I had anticipated economic problems. They did come. There was a monetary disruption in 1971 with the breakdown of the Bretton Woods Agreement, and I talked about economic issues and used politics as a forum. And yet I did end up winning a seat. I served for 4 terms back in the 70s and the 80s, and then I went back to my medical practice and then came back to Congress later. And the decision about a year ago to run for this office came not as a burning desire for me to be the president as much as the encouragement from so many supporters who said this was time to hear this message. And my reluctance at that time was that I wasn't sure whether the country was really ready for a strict constitutionalist. I knew it was necessary, but I wasn't sure how the people would respond because I understand that it's very important that people want change in order to have it. But I finally made the decision that I would seek this office, and yet it's been 1 year, and I have been probably proven that I shouldn't have been skeptical about it because I have found that so many people are anxious, the people are ready, and the young people are ready for this message. So I am very delighted to deliver this message, which is a strict constitutional approach to our government, personal liberty and free markets along with sound money, and also a foreign policy which is designed to protect our national security but not to get so overly involved overseas. And this message is what I feel so emphatic about and so important to get out to the American people. And if it is to be, I will be the president and I will deliver that message and pursue this as a president.
Thank you. You mentioned that voters seem to want change, and of course the other candidates are talking about change as well. As president, what changes would you make once you were sworn in?
Well, the biggest changes that a president could bring about quickly would be in foreign policy. And you're right, there's a lot of the other candidates that want change. For instance, they do talk about the foreign policy and the war going on over in the Middle East. But most of the time what they're talking about is change, is they want a change of management style. They want to say, well, more troops here, more troops there, and I would do this, I would do that. But I'm not talking about that type of change. I'm talking about a more strategic, philosophic change, questioning whether or not we should be the policeman of the world, whether or not we should have an empire, whether or not we should be in 130 countries, whether or not we should have 700 bases around the world. And dealing also, with the idea of how do we pay for this and what's happening to us. So I want significant significant changes. And the most important thing a president could do is change that. We could bring peace to the Middle East with a few significant changes. We don't need to be fighting wars that were unnecessary. And we went into the war in Iraq without a declaration of war. There were no weapons of mass destruction. There were no al-Qaeda in the region. There was no threat to our national security. And we all recognize this. And the others who claim they want change have dug their heels in, and their change is, why don't we just send more troops? And then they're talking about what are we going to do in Pakistan, and we're also very much involved in Afghanistan, and it goes on and on. So that type of change is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about change in foreign policy. A president has a lot of authority on foreign policy and movement of troops, and eventually this is the only way we can work out of our financial mess, is starting to bring these troops home, spending that money here at home rather than overseas.
Okay, thank you. We will go to questions from the audience in just a moment, but one other question for you, Dr. Paul, from me. Candidates, Republican and Democrat, have been talking about a so-called strong America. What is your vision of a strong America, and how do we as a nation get there?
Well, sometimes people, when they want to act strong, they overreact. I think somebody who is strong is self-confident, and they don't have to be bullying themselves around. Self-confidence is what we need. And when we go about the world and say that our strength is that we will tell other people what to do, I don't think that is a sense of strength. A sense of strength is a sense of confidence that you can have a strong national defense, which we need and should have. The foreign policy we have today is actually weakened us. And we want a strong national defense, but we also want a foreign policy that is designed that shows cooperation with people, not antagonism, not threatening people. So far, we've had so few choices in our foreign policy, not just with this administration, but with many administrations. We have a choice of either threatening people with sanctions and bombs, or then we turn around and we finally find somebody that we put in charge of a country and we support some dictator, say like a Musharraf, then we give him money. And my idea is there's a third option, and that is be friends with people. They're going to be imperfect, but we're imperfect. A strong country will be working to improve ourselves, or us as individuals, or ourselves as a country, and then set an example for the world. That's my idea of strength and confidence, because I am very confident about what the American people stand for and what our country stands for. We have a great Constitution. We have great traditions and freedom. We once knew what a free market economy was about. We once knew what sound money was all about. And we have lost that confidence. And that is what we have to have our strength in. Strength in the confidence that freedom really works. And when we do that, then we don't have to be pushing ourselves. I think it's insecurity that makes people push too hard and say, be like us and do it, or we'll threaten you. It's quite a bit different. It is strength in self-confidence and belief in our system of government.
Okay, thank you.